Hey everybody, Fully here. Welcome to the weekly news. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 2nd to the 8th of March, 2026. So, Capcom had a Capcom Spotlight last week, and there wasn't really anything massively new there. They showed off a good bit more of the next Onimusha game, Onimusha Way of the Sword. A little bit of the storyline, Miyamoto Musashi, and this kind of thing. A couple of characters that you'll meet. Not really a whole lot more about the game itself, or if it's any. Like, it's obviously very different to previous Onimusha games, but they haven't really gone into exactly how different. If you haven't played them, they are effectively Resident Evil, but you have a sword instead. Like, there's nothing really all that different. But, there's clearly like a much deeper combat system at play in this game. So yeah, they haven't really gone into that. So I'm not really sure what this trailer was about. Maybe it's just to hype people up. Anyway, they had that, and they also had a new Pragmata trailer, again showing off a bit more of the game, a little bit more story things. Your child AI character wants to go to Earth. I'm sure that will end well. But there's been a change in the release date, and for a change for Pragmata at least, it's actually moved up the release date. So it was going to be the 24th of April, and is now moved up to the 17th, I think. 17th. So a whole week earlier. Why? I don't know. I don't think they're trying to get out of the way of anything. If anything, they're in the way of... No, I was going to say Crimson Desert, but that's actually next week. That's March. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they pushed it ahead a week, but they did. Weird choice. Anyway, outside of the Capcom Spotlight, Xbox are still trying to put out fires, so they've just randomly announced the name of their new, or what will be the next Xbox console, or at least the code name it's going under. So Project Helix, the next console, will lead in performance and serve as a hybrid for Xbox and PC games. They'll be talking about it at GDC next week, which is this week. We might hear more about it, and I'll talk about more of it on the weekend. But all we really know is that it will play Xbox games and PC games. What PC games? What will be the restrictions? What are the specs of the console, etc., etc.? We don't know. Speculation from insiders is that it will be kind of a niche machine, probably $1,000 or $1,200, something like that. Something like a Steam machine, but like higher specs, maybe something like that. And it could be that that's what they're positioning it as a sort of hybrid machine, like what Valve are trying to make the Steam machine out of, or what the Steam Deck is currently. I guess we'll see. Anyway, that's all we know about it. The code name for our next generation console. Surprising a lot of people, Ruiner is getting a sequel. So this is from, as it says there, the developers from the original Ruiner, but also Metal Eden, which is a really fun, very fast-paced first-person shooter that's came out early this year. And Ruiner is a top-down twin-stick shooter. Very hard, very difficult game if I recall playing it, but it was really good. And I'm kind of surprised they're doing the sequel though, but cool. Most of this trailer is CG. But one thing they do show off is you will be playing multiple characters, or multiple shells, I believe is the way they put it. So maybe your character can move their consciousness between shells or something like that. I don't know. And he does the Henry Cavill arm reload for the laugh. But yeah, it is more or less Ruiner again, but with like different character types, I guess we'll say. Whereas the original was, only had the one character type. Where this will just basically mean they just split up the weapons and the they split up the guns and the melee weapons and just have them only apply to certain shells, or if it's going to be like a little bit more nuanced than that, I don't know. No release date or anything. It's just a wish list, and that's well, I skipped over it now. Hang on, let me get back to the end, because that's obviously a John Wick reference. But what may not be clear is the the gun with the one the gun that stands out the most, I suppose, because it has actual writing on it, is a nod to Metal Eden, their other game. Anyway, speaking of games we're surprised we're still getting sequels of or something, I don't know, considering what the fuck's going on with Ubisoft, who's surprised? Anyway, Ubisoft talk up unique and darker Assassin's Creed Hex. Also promised their Invictus multiplayer game is making progress, and Assassin's Creed 4 Remake, the worst kept secret in the industry these days, is a thing. It's definitely happening. Anyway, there have been a lot of layoffs and departures from Ubisoft. A lot of formerly producers or executive producers on the Assassin's Creed franchise have left. Some people who have been there for a very long time have dropped off or have been forced out or like stealth laid off and this kind of thing. So the new guy who is in charge, who was, I think, part of the Assassin's Creed 4 team, Jean Guizdon, is that the Assassin's Creed multiplayer project, codenamed Invictus, is still progressing steadily. It's going to be like kind of a For Honor thing. No, For Honor, the For Honor team are working on it. I think that's what they're saying. And it's not a Fall Guy. It's not a Fall Guy game. I don't know why anybody thought it was, but okay. Assassin's Creed Shadows is winding down. There might be some more content, but for the most part, they've finished. Assassin's Creed Hex is going to be a narrative-focused game, whatever that means. Does that mean, I don't know, like an Until Dawn thing? Like it's a choose-your-own-adventure game and it just happens to be set in Assassin's Creed? Or is it an Assassin's Creed game that just doesn't have all the bloat? Like Assassin's Creed Mirage or the original Assassin's Creed games? Speculation is that it is set during the witch trials of the Holy Roman Empire, which would be pretty cool. And the Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced is what it's going to be called. There is an image on Ubisoft's blog. There. So there you go. That's the official image on the official website and everything. So it's a thing. No release date or anything. Who knows when it's coming out? This year at some point. Keep your eyes peeled, I guess. Moving on. Hotel Barcelona released end of last year, maybe early this year, something like that. And was like a crossover between Swery and Suda. And it seems like it was going to be pretty interesting, but when it released, it did not have a great reception. Metascore of 58. So, in a surprising change, they haven't just, wiped their hands of the game and moved on. They have taken the time to overhaul the game. It's also getting a lot of cameos from various indie games, Demon School, Sliderhead, Promise Mascot Agency. There's a couple of other ones in there as well. So there's a big patch called the Under New Management patch. Movement is faster, combat recovery shorter, parries now matter. Apparently they didn't matter before. Dodges create space, enemies react longer, multiplayer is fair. Lots of things that sound like it just makes the game better. So yeah, if like me you were put off by the reviews and the critical reception, it might be worth another look, or it might be worth wait for the critical response, I guess, for the Under New Management patch. I don't think there is a specified date for when that goes live. Don't see it. But yeah, I think it's good that it's a game that is, they're at least willing to give it another shot, whereas a lot of publishers and a lot of games in the games industry right now are, if they don't hit it out of the park immediately, they're just thrown away, which we'll be talking about in a minute. Anyway, Xbox Game Pass, Wave 1 for March, so we're looking at a couple of interesting ones. Now just open the image. Open image. To a T is from same developer from Katamari Damacy, and actually recently said that it was a failure. So he's kind of rethinking video game development in the first place. But then maybe they've gotten some kind of cash injection from going with Game Pass. To a T is you play a school-going child who is stuck in a T-pose. And it's kind of just getting through their daily life and what they have to do because they can't bend their arms and that kind of thing. Formula One game. Planet Atlanta 2 is a brand new game. It's out this week. We'll talk about it in the new releases section. Construction Simulator is what it sounds like. Cyberpunk is probably the big standout game. If you haven't got around to playing it now, its initial release was obviously well storied and very bad, but it has really come along. It's not that it's not buggy anymore, but the bugs aren't as egregious as they used to be, and it's a good game. Hollow Knight Silk Song only just recently came out, so interesting that they waited a little bit to get all of the people who have been clamoring for the game get all their money first and then put it on Game Pass, but we're not going to talk about that, I guess. And then I don't know what Gabby's Doll Pass is, but it looks like a colorful kids game. Anyway, free game over in the Epic Game Store is Turnip Boy Robs a Bank. It's what it sounds like. You're a turnip, you rob a bank. I think this is a sequel to Turnip Boy Commits Tax Fraud or something like that. What was the original game called? I can't remember. It's something like Turnip Boy Commits Tax Fraud or something like that. They're very silly adventure games, very dumb, very comedic. And the sequel is just more of that. They're fun games. Those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? You can play, and a lot of people are playing, Pokemon Pokopia. This is a new Pokemon game that is equal parts kind of Minecraft and Animal Crossing. You play a Ditto who disguises themselves as a human being, and that definitely doesn't have existential questions about the Pokemon universe, but it looks like human beings are gone. This is some kind of far-flung dystopian post-apocalypse situation, and you are collecting Pokemon as you do, gotta catch them all, bringing them back to your Pokopia and helping them live out their lives to the fullest, and you learn like different skills from different Pokemon and stuff like that. From what I've seen from reviews, it's apparently very good, very charming. Animations are very fun. The Pokemon themselves have great personalities, like this kind of thing. But yeah, Ditto's being able to turn into people is concerning. Anyway, moving on. Marathon, finally out. Yeah, it's doing okay, I think. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in industry bullshit because their microtransaction stuff is egregious. But from what I've seen from people playing it, people who are into these kind of games are really liking it. Whether it's supplanting art creators or not, probably not. But the two of them can live side by side. I think this trailer is entirely CG. I don't think there's any gameplay in it. What I have seen from a lot of people is the art style is very impressive. It's a real looker. Some people do find it difficult to parse quickly. Like the text can be difficult to read when you are in the middle of a gunfight, stressful situations, what have you. And I have heard from other people, and I kind of include myself on this, is like, God, I wish it was a single player game because it does look really cool. And Bungie do make games that feel good, or make guns at least that feel good to shoot. And the storyline of the original Marathon is very good. And all of those things kind of make me wish it was a single player game. Anyway, moving on. Esoteric Ebb is a kind of medieval fantasy Disco Elysium. So you play Ebb. You have various medieval fantasy things like Dungeons and Dragons, Baldur's Gate, anything kind of like that. But also it's very silly and very dumb. So it is kind of an adventure game, not unlike Disco Elysium. It has that kind of vibe to it, but there's literally the guy from Disco Elysium and this kind of thing. Using dice rolls, again, you might be familiar with Baldur's Gate, or if you've played Disco Elysium, you'll also know all of these things. And voices in your head, yada yada. It's very much let's apply Disco Elysium to Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing. It's very good. Moving on. Planet Atlanta 2, as I said, it's in the Xbox Game Pass this month. I don't think it's going to be on PlayStation Plus, but maybe down the line. The original Planet Atlanta was a lot of fun. You play character's name I forget, but you have this little black cat monkey creature thing. That's very cute and very fun to play around with, and you kind of, between the two of you, solve puzzles in a sort of limbo inside kind of game. running away from those horrible robots is probably the worst part of that game. Anyway, Land of Lana 2, again, from what I've seen from reviews, seems to be just more of it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because the original game was good. Remaster, Legacy of Kain Defiance is the last Legacy of Kain game. Kind of left the game on a bit of a cliffhanger and then never went back to it. To my great lamentation. Defiance is probably one of the weaker games, but I do quite like it. Mostly because you can play as both Kain and Raziel, whereas in most Legacy of Kain games you had to pick one. Now, Soul Reaver, it was only Raziel, and Blood Omen, it was only Kain, whereas in Defiance it's both. And you swap between the two of them at various points in the story. Let's get back to the start. What I've seen from the remaster, it's fine. As I said, the original game is okay. I like it. I like it a lot because it has some really good like telekinesis combat that wouldn't have become as big a thing until much later. Like Star Wars The Force Unleashed was the only other game that was still doing it, and I also really like that combat. Now, the game itself, maybe not, but the combat I really liked. And I quite like the combat in Legacy of Kain Defiance. But yeah, it's not the best one in the series, let's put it that way. Anyway, last game, Legend of Kiyomori, and the reason I put it at the end is because it's an early access thing. So the game itself isn't quite out yet, but you're playing a like 13th century horse courier, I think, in Mongolia. Anyway, I played a little bit of it in not the last Steam Next, was the one before that, and it's very impressive. So it's kind of like a survival game, like a lifestyle sim in some ways, but 13th century horse courier is a little bit of a strange one, and they like go real in deep with it. It's good. That's really good. I'm still going to keep my usual, I don't play early access games, I wait for 1.0. Granted, I have been tempted by a lot of games, but so far I have held off. But if you're, have less, I'm not going to say less scruples, like it's totally fine to play early access games. I personally don't. But if you want to, you can check it out, because it's on both Steam and Epic in their various early access things. Unfortunately, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So we were talking about Hotel Barcelona getting another chance to take another whack at it. Highguard is not getting that chance. We did talk about this a couple of weeks ago, where they had laid off a significant amount of the team, and there was a question on whether they were going to use that time to redo the game, strip it back. That has happened in previous games where they come out and the game was not well received. They did lay off a couple of, or sizable amount of the team, because it's easier to remake, we'll say, a game with a smaller team, because you don't need as many people working on content, you don't need as many people working on various other aspects, because you're restarting the game effectively. But no, they're not doing that. There was also the speculation that Tencent were, I think it's Tencent anyway, were the silent partner or the silent publisher for Wildlight Entertainment. I don't think that was ever corroborated, but I think it's largely assumed that that was the case. They pulled funding, and it looks like Wildlight Entertainment themselves don't have the money to keep going effectively. So Highguard will be offline after the 12th of March, which, if you're watching this, probably already happened at that point. Hang on. No longer be playable after March 12th. Since launch, more than 2 million players have stepped into Highguard's world. Sure, be like that, and many believe. Despite the passion and hard work of our team, we have not been able to build a sustainable player base to support the game long term. Servers will remain online until March 12th. We hope you'll jump in, but at the end of time, it will be done. Yeah, so what the fuck went wrong with Highguard? Now, not being internal to the team, it will have to be largely speculative. What we've heard is they were planning to do a kind of Apex Legends stealth launch and launch the game in a kind of pseudo early access, not actually early access, because Apex Legends didn't. As far as I remember, Apex Legends didn't launch into early access, but it was still kind of bare bones when it launched. And I think that was their plan with Highguard. And then they got the opportunity to feature in the Game Awards, which was not their plan. It was an invitation from Jeff Keighley, allegedly, that they thought free marketing, I guess. And in the manner that it was deployed, we'll say, at Game Awards, it being the game used to wrap up. Typically, it's the one that's meant to be the most impressive, maybe. A one more thing kind of thing, just to send off the show on a high note, on a Highguard note, was not received as well by the video game public. And arguably, if they had gone ahead with their Apex Legends style stealth launch, might have gone better for them. On the other hand, the industry has changed dramatically since Apex Legends' stealth launch, and they also would have had EA's marketing team behind them for when the game did launch. Then they could start pushing, Apex Legends 1.2, 1.3, whatever things, which they wouldn't have had with Highguard. And Tencent, on the Tencent side of things, Tencent and NetEase have been rowing back on their Western development financing. So it's not necessarily surprised when Tencent see that Highguard didn't hit it out of the park immediately. They decided, we're good. I feel like they were looking for that. If it wasn't going to be a $100 billion revenue thing, they didn't want any part of it. So yeah, I think there's some other questions on. There's another interview going around where one of the former devs were saying that they were targeting the competitive scene a bit too much, and that the game was too sweaty. In quotes, it was too sweaty for the average player. Potentially, again, something that could have been refined if they weren't required to make all of the money immediately. But we won't know, likely. It'll probably be a while before we hear anything about this. I mean, we never heard anything about Concord. Anyway, speaking of Concord, Sony are allegedly pulling back on their PC releases. This is a report from Bloomberg saying that Sony are effectively no longer going to publish their first-party PS5 games on PC. Some other sales data suggests that the reason they're doing that is because they just weren't making a lot of money in the first place. So poor sales for recent titles released on a platform, the PC platform specifically. The company's strategy of releasing PC ports well after the PS5 release is effectively attributed to why it doesn't make a lot of money. It leads to lower audience share on PC compared to games that were released on multiple platforms simultaneously, so Helldivers being the notable exception because it came out pretty much exactly, I think, the same time it released on PlayStation. So they would have had multiple opportunities, we'll say. Whereas people waiting for Death Stranding to make its way over to PC, people waiting for The Last of Us to make its way over to PC and what have you, they've already waited X number of years. What's another couple of months until it's on sale, or wait around for it, or I've already seen somebody play through it, or I've already borrowed somebody's console and I've played it myself. Like, any number of things people could have done. Anyway, PC accounts for around 13% of total players in the first 3 months after both releases. This would be PlayStation titles ported to PC after their console launch. See PC account for it. Okay, so this is them launching, we'll say, Ghost of Tsushima, like 2 years after it came out. The PC, it would only have been 13% of players, and then obviously that's 87% would have been PlayStation. Whereas if they had launched the game simultaneously, and other publishers and developers who have launched their games simultaneously across console, PC tends to end up being 44%. So clearly, if Sony were really interested in doing it and really maximizing the amount of money, they would release them simultaneously, unless, of course, Sony weren't getting a massive cut of sales from PlayStation, or making sure people buy their console. So we do have the other side of this, in that in the future, Valve are intending to bring Steam machines, which is an encroachment on the console market. Sony not wanting to give them a leg up by having their games also on Steam. We've Xbox maybe exiting the market. We don't know if this Project Helix is really going to be a niche machine, or if it's actually meant to be a large consumer model. We don't know. And then there's like tons of like hybrid PC and handheld kind of thing. So Sony, I think, feeling that their differentiator is arguably their first party games. So trying to get people onto PlayStation, not just to buy their first party software, but because Sony also get a cut out of any sales on their consoles. So the idea being that if you've bought a PS5 and you are, deep into that ecosystem, like myself, that you'll buy other games on the PS5, not just Sony's first party games. And those games, any sales from that, Sony gets a cut. And if those games contain microtransactions, Sony gets a cut. And if those games are online, you'll need a PlayStation Plus subscription, Sony gets a cut. So all of those things kind of mean that arguably Sony doesn't want you playing their games anywhere else if they can manage it. Now, is that good for the consumer? No. Is that good for games preservation? No. Is it good for Sony? Yes. So it's not surprising. It was surprising in the first place that they brought their games to PC. That all by itself was very strange, and seems like it was more of an experiment. And the experiment told them it's not worth it. Whether they'll keep doing it with PC or with multiplayer games, because they've done it with Marathon, obviously. I'd say they will, because multiplayer games, slightly differently, is that you benefit way more by having more people playing them. And since Sony own Marathon, like any kind of microtransactions you buy there, they're getting effectively all of that. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of Marathon, speaking of all of the money people spend on Marathon, $40 extraction shooter Marathon launches with $15 cosmetic packs. Right, so they're already beginning the nickel and diming. The game isn't free to play, costs $40, and then on top of that, cosmetic packs are $15 day one. Has the premium currency bullshit. It's called Lux in Marathon. Cosmetic packs are a skin and then like some camos for the gun and like stickers and this kind of thing. The stickers are consumable. They're not like just a sticker you can apply as many times as you want. It's Bungie's Destiny shaders, which were stupidly a consumable thing, which they should never have been. But they're also doing the dark pattern bullshit where 100 lux is $1, 500 lux is $5 kind of thing, but you won't be able to get them in denominations where you'll be able to just buy a pack and be done with it. You'll only get almost enough to buy a pack, and then the next level up is way too much. That kind of shite. Now, since this article came out, Bungie have changed that, in that now there is a way to just buy a skin, not the pack, just the skin in the pack, for like 1200 lux, and I think there's a like increasing, whatever the opposite of diminishing returns is, 500 lux for $5, and then 1000 lux for like $8 or something like that. Or no, it's like 1200 for $10 or something. You get like extra denominations. Anyway, point is, it's attacking that dark pattern shit. But the fact that they started with this is not a good look. From what I've read, the battle pass is similarly as egregious, and unlike other games where if you bought the battle pass and managed to complete that battle pass, it would give you enough premium currency to buy the next battle pass, and effectively you would only ever need to buy one battle pass ever, and you'd be able to effectively keep playing all of the other ones, unless of course you didn't complete the battle pass, which is dumb. The fact that you cannot complete a battle pass is by far the most egregious, I think. Maybe not the most egregious of these microtransaction things, but it's certainly one of them. I guess one benefit is that there's no time limit on these battle passes, so it's a bit like Helldivers. They're not limited to the whatever season they're in. It's like when you buy it, you have forever to finish it, effectively. Which might be why they don't have the premium currency thing, but it's still a bit shit. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of being a bit shit, NetEase has reportedly pulled funding for Yakuza creator Toshiro Nagoshi's studio and next game Gang of Dragon. So Gang of Dragon was shown off at the Game Awards at the end of last year, starring... I can't remember his fucking name. Anyway, he's the guy in Doctor Strange. His friend Wong. I can't remember the actor's name. Anyway, it was Yakuza again. Toshiro Nagoshi is the Yakuza creator who left Sega. NetEase helped him set up a studio, and the idea was that they would fund his first game, which was going to be Gang of Dragon. And earlier this year, I think, they effectively said that to complete Gang of Dragon, they would need another 7 billion yen, which is about 33 million pound, or it's about $40 million, I think. And NetEase said no. Basically, they said, mm-mm. And now we've talked about NetEase and Tencent pulling back on their Western developed games, but this is them pulling back on like Eastern developer games as well. So they might just be pulling back in general, or simply just not willing to spend an extra 7 billion yen. Now, the argument that you could make here is it's a bit, what to say, not blackmail exactly, but you could say like, oh, we've got the game mostly done, but if you want it finished, we're going to need another 7 billion yen, and you've invested a lot of money in this. It would be a real shame if the game never came out. And NetEase calling their bluff. Or you could look at it as NetEase agreed to fund the game, and they're now pulling out of that agreement. Which side of it you want to come down on, I suppose, depends on if you're a Yakuza fan or not. The other way to look at it is Yakuza itself. The whole game series has gone on to like 9 parts, 10 parts maybe in some cases, and some spin-offs. A lot of that is reuse of assets. I think you spend like the first 6 games in the same map. Like, there's a lot of reuse. You could argue that a lot of like front loading for Gang of Dragon would pay dividends in Gang of Dragon 2, Gang of Dragon 3, when they're just going to reuse the same assets and follow Yakuza's formula, if you like. But either way, it does seem like NetEase are saying no, that they're not shutting down development. They're saying that the studio is free to find funding elsewhere. But 7 billion yen is going to be a bit of a tall order, I think. It can continue development. Sources that spoke with Bloomberg said that it must essentially take on the relevant costs if the developer wants to keep any assets or branding. It doesn't say how long they have to do that. Anyway, Nagoshi left Sega in and around 2020, 2021, pandemic. Set up Nagoshi Studio to make Gang of Dragon. They've been working on it since then. But if it doesn't manage to find another source of funding in the meantime, it essentially sounds like the studio will be forced to shut down. Yeah. Maybe. Now, there is an argument there for another publisher to say, hey, this game is mostly done, and it's from a proven developer director who gave Sega one of its best performing IPs in Yakuza. And most of the investment is done. Like, NetEase have spent more than 7 billion to develop this game at this point. You know, like, you could make the argument that you could swoop in at the last second, but it's 7 billion yen, still a lot. It's still a lot of money. Anyway, speaking of a lot of money, Nintendo sues US government over Trump administration tariffs. So you may recall when the Switch 2 launched, it was basically right in the middle of the tariff nonsense. And as a result, Nintendo delayed the Nintendo Switch launch. And I think at one point they ended up, I can't remember now if they actually increased the price or if they ate the price. I don't remember. I think they increased it, but I don't quite remember. Anyway, Nintendo of America has filed a lawsuit today over the Trump administration tariffs, looking for cash back after a federal judge ruled Wednesday that companies that paid tariffs are due refunds. Nintendo is seeking those refunds with interest. Companies that paid the tariffs in questions are due refunds. This is coming from the US Court of International Trade. For their part, the Customs and Border Protection are saying they cannot comply with the refund order, meaning the money's not there anymore. It's already been spent. It's in Trump's slush fund, maybe. Timing of the tariffs hit Nintendo especially hard last year. Publisher was headed towards the launch of the Switch 2. The pre-order period was delayed because of the tariffs. Nintendo did successfully execute its strategy because there was a 90-day pause, but it does seem like they did end up having to pay tariffs later on. Maybe not quite on the launch period, but certainly the period afterwards. They're looking to recoup some of those costs. Arguably, Sony might row in as well with PlayStation, but a lot of companies are seeking those refunds because, hey, free money. Or not free money, but money back anyway. Whether Nintendo will pass that on, I think they ate the cost. I don't think, despite how much the Switch 2 was, I don't think they increased it because of tariffs. Don't remember. Anyway, there'll be some messaging around it. But it might be funny. You know, it'd be a little bit of a Godzilla, like, you know, two monsters clashing, the Nintendo legal team and the US government. You know, let them fight. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of terrible decisions. The Sims 4 shows a terrible time to roll out paid mods where EA keeps 70% of the money. Amazing. So Sims 4 has been out for a decade, maybe at this point, longer. No sign of Sims 5 anytime soon. And they've decided to roll out effectively a paid mods section for Sims 4. Now, if you're not playing a lot of Sims 4, you may not be aware, but there is a shit ton of expansion packs and content packs, and some of them are official and some of them are from third party, we'll say, developers. But for the first time, there'll be custom content packs made by content creators in the game itself or in the game's marketplace. And on top of that, it's rolling out mods for consoles, which is pretty cool. So The Sims 4 is a dense game, hundreds of content packs and pieces of DLC EA puts out every year and refuses to actually fix the game at all. There's tons of bugs, there's tons of issues, tons of quality of life improvements they could make, and instead they're just pumping out content packs. Reminds me a little bit of PUBG. Anyway, buying all the fancy new kits, packs, and more requires players to purchase EA's new proprietary in-game money. Great. Moolah, we've got some more premium currency horse shit. But yeah. EA pumping out all these content packs, not actually fixing anything, long complained of performance and bug issues, and that EA has been slow to address them. There are numerous paid content packs that seem to keep coming even as player complaints go unaddressed. There's obviously the Saudi money fund, the Savvy Games, or the Savvy Games Group. Money coming in that is largely debt that is going to be leveraged on EA. EA has to repay like $30 billion or something in debt. Purchasing EA for $55 billion, $20 billion of which will be financed by EA that will take it on as debt. I don't know why that's legal, but okay. So yeah, expect a lot of these kind of things going forward. Expect a lot of bullshit microtransactions in times where there shouldn't have been microtransactions. Now you might say this is an opportunity for third-party content creators who may have felt forced to release their things free because nobody likes paid mods. And this is giving them an opportunity to, one, get their stuff seen by more people because it's now part of the official EA marketplace. And potentially make a bit of money. The problem with that is EA is getting a ridiculous share of the market. Makers take home approximately 30% of the moolah from their pack sales. Now, real question here is, do they get it in moolah or do they get it in cash? Even Twitch gives you 50%. Like, Valve takes 30%, Sony takes 30%. They've like inverted it entirely. So, you know, that's not great. There's also the issue here is that this is all just to prep people for the inevitable only supported mods and content will be through our marketplace kind of thing. So this will further stifle any kind of problematic content, we'll say, LGBTQ things, anything that the Saudi Arabia connection maybe don't want. Yeah, either way, paid mods are never a good thing. They should not be allowed, and the 70% cut is fucking egregious. Not egregious, though, is Good Games Group acquires Ziff Davis's publishing business to launch Baylor Games. So, didn't keep my highlights, great. Anyway, so this is actually kind of a long-running story. So the Good Games Group are a former workers who worked for, former employees rather, who worked for the Humble Bundle Games publishing arm who would have published games like Slay the Spire, Hat in Time, Signalis, Fight in Tight Spaces, a couple of other things, Coral Island, that kind of thing. And when Ziff Davis were trying to effectively close Humble Bundle Games publishing, a lot of these people jumped ship, created their own group, Good Games Group, and were shipping around to find games to publish, basically. So this is kind of a weird sort of giving Humble Games, I think is what it's called, Humble Games Publishing to the original employees of the group, and Ziff Davis just wiping their hands of it. Now, they're not giving it to them, they have to pay for it, obviously, but it's long-term stewardship of AAA titles, which is not a term I like, but whatever, it just means indies. So with this change in ownership, we'll say, they have the publishing rights to Fights in Tight Spaces, Slay the Spire, Hat in Time, Signalis, Forager, Coral Island, Monaco, Wizard of Legend, and a lot of other games. And the rest of this article is quotes from the different founders of Good Games Group and now Baylor Games, basically saying that we just want to help people get their games out. And we're not trying to make a kind of growth at all costs behemoth, which is what Ziff Davis were looking for. So potentially good news. We only will really know when they, publish their own, like their very first game, instead of taking over the publishing contracts for those games. But hopefully it works out, and it's an interesting worker sees the means of productions in a very roundabout way, but that's kind of what it ended up being. Anyway, speaking of, I don't know how to do a segue for this one. Anyway, happening over in the community, one person's unhinged crusade to erase an obscure PC game from existence has finally been stopped. So this is a game called Cookies Bustle. I think it was a Dreamcast thing. Very old. 90s Japanese PC game. Okay, a 90s PC game from Japan. That's fucking niche. Anyway, had been a kind of copyright DMCA bullshit hell for a very long time. Anytime anybody put something up about Cookies Bustle, it was DMCA'd almost immediately. And if you know anything about the DMCA, basically it means that site owners or site hosts basically have an obligation to take your content down and verify later if there was a copyright issue. And most of the time, they don't do the second part. They just take it down because they receive too many of these DMCA requests. To investigate all of them would be onerous, so they don't bother. They just automatically take the thing down. Anyway, the Video Game History Foundation decided to push back against this and basically wanted to not necessarily unmask who was doing it, but try to figure out who they were, because as far as they were concerned, nobody owns the copyright to Cookies Bustle, or more specifically, nobody knows who owns the copyright to Cookies Bustle. So it's kind of in a very strange copyright situation, which is called orphaned work, which is basically when somebody owns the copyright to it, but we don't know who. And legally they haven't come forward or whatever. So technically you can't use it because it's not in the public domain. But also there's nobody who can actually enforce its copyright. So it's kind of in a weird legal limbo in that case. So they are quite confident that this person didn't own the copyright to it and couldn't prove it. And they were proven right. They couldn't prove it. So since 2022, an individual known as Brandon White under the company Graceware has unleashed swarms of copyright claims at any online material relating to the game Cookies Bustle. Strikes extended well beyond YouTube, with DMCA claims circulating against Twitch streams, fan art, ROM sites, even Discord somehow. The Video Game History Foundation had received a physical copy of the game, and as is their thing that they do, they made a page dedicated to the game to talk about it and talk about the physical copy and this kind of thing. It's a good site. You check it out. But no, that also got hit with a copyright strike. Somehow getting through the web host into the Archives web portal and all of those things. Anyway, although Graceware's actions against us were incredibly disruptive, we saw this as an opportunity to get to the bottom of what was happening. This is Phil Salvador, director, library director for Video Game History Fund. So how was this happening, and how were they able to so robustly force DMCA strikes on so many people? And it turns out they were getting professional help to do it. So they were using resources from the UK Interactive Entertainment Group, or UKI, UKIE, who are meant to be set up as a kind of legal umbrella for independent developers in the UK. And anyway, this guy was able to use this despite having no evidence of ownership of Cookies Bustle, so Video Game History Foundation basically went to Yuki to basically say, hey, fuck's going on with this guy? Can you... Because we know they don't have the copyright, because nobody has the we don't know who has the copyright to Cookies Bustle, so fuck's going on. Yuki, first off, were non-responsive, but on a second attempt of trying to get action to them, Video Game History were unwilling to drop the Cookies Bustle page a second time. Yuki reached out to them. They eventually had a back and forth. Anyway, it was an opportunity to call Brandon White's bluff, with the foundation telling Video Game History Fund to reach out to Graceware to provide proof. Video Game History Foundation told Yuki to reach out to Graceware to provide proof that they had any claim to the original game's creation, which they couldn't do. Which basically had Yuki pull their you want to call it membership to the UK Interactive Entertainment Association. So they basically no longer had the professional help to send out all these DMCAs, and as such, they were no longer able to prevent Cookies Bustle from going up on the Video Game History Fund, or the Video Game History Foundation. History Fund must be something else, because that name is also stuck in my head. And a bunch of other YouTube videos, Twitch streams have also gone up in the meantime. So this is a good and very strange story. Like, somebody went, for whatever reason, wanted to just delete this game from history. But people in the games preservation space were adamant they'd not do that. But it's also a really interesting kind of legal thing from Orphaned Works in general on if you don't know who owns the copyright and they can't enforce the copyright, does not that make them de facto public domain? Except it doesn't, because just because we don't know who the copyright owner is doesn't mean they don't exist, and they could at some point make themselves known. It's a weird kind of legal limbo for this kind of thing. And there's a lot of like shareware and shovelware that's in that kind of position, which makes game preservation an even more difficult thing to do, because you don't know who actually owns the copyright. And sometimes you're waiting for copyright to expire, in which case, like, it doesn't matter who owned the copyright. It's been around long enough that it's just de facto public domain at that point. Look up the Mickey Mouse rule of copyright law. Anyway, Cookies Bustle is now free, at least from this one particular guy who had an axe to grind, I guess. Leave Pokemon play in the background. Anyway, that was your news for the 2nd to the 8th of March, 2026. Yeah, the Capcom Spotlight was kind of disappointing because there was just nothing new, but I can't say I was really expecting anything new, because they still have, like, they've just released Resident Evil Requiem, they have Pragmata coming out soon, and then they'll have Onimusha later in the year. Like, they've got a lot going on already, that them announcing a new game is probably not going to happen until later on in the year. And what that will be, I mean, they have Mega Man coming back. I forget what it's called now, Dual something. And I imagine that will be a focus for them for next year. And there's the often rumored Resident Evil remakes. Which ones are actually being remade? Is it 5? Is it Code Veronica? Is it 1? Apparently they're remaking 1 again. Why? Leave it alone. It's perfect. I mean, yes, the Resident Evil 2 remake was very impressive, and the 4 remake was also very impressive, but also 3 wasn't. You know, like, it was good, it's just not as good as I think it could have been, and it felt rushed. But yeah, like, leave it alone. Leave RE1. Let RE1 be the weird one, because it kind of is the weird one already. Remake Resident Evil Outbreak. That one actually needs a remake. 5 doesn't. 5 doesn't need a remake. It plays fine the way it is. And then they'll have to, like, decide if they're actually going to remake Resident Evil 6. That would be a funny one. And all of their other games, all of their other IPs they could be working on. Anyway, industry bullshit wise, Sony pulling back from PC publishing is not really surprising because it did kind of strike as a bit of an experiment in the first place. Keeping it multiplayer only, like, yeah, it's frustrating from a preservation standpoint because now there are lots of games locked to the PlayStation. Demon Souls is locked to the PlayStation. The Demon Souls remake is locked to the PlayStation. The Infamous series is locked to the PS3. This kind of thing. And getting them out of that would have been good. But it doesn't look like that's going to be happening unless you want to stream the game, which I don't, because the infrastructure is not good enough for it. Anyway, NetEase pulling out a Gang of Dragon. Yeah, it's not great, but also it does smack of a bit asking for too much money, maybe. Or you wouldn't know what the original contract was, what was the original budget, how much over budget is that? Is like 7 billion an egregious like 700% increase on the budget, or is it like a 10% increase on the budget? We don't know because we don't know what the original budget was. Tencent pulling out Highguard and that making Wildlight effectively defunct. It's not exactly surprising, and it's such a strange case study. Like, it really does feel like it was a perfect storm of how to fuck up a game launch in some ways. There's been a few of those. There's maybe a few too many for the industry to weather. I don't know. Anyway, and the weird cookies bustle thing is just a strange microcosm of DMCA shenanigans. Anyway, over elsewhere on the channel, I have put up a video from the Steam Next Fest thing that I said I would. I know I said I would do it last week, but I didn't. Anyway, did it this week. So there's like 15 games that I played, 15 demos that I played on Steam Next Fest, and I gave kind of my impressions of them. Some of them I really liked, some of them are a bit rough. Might need a little bit of work. But yeah, you want to check that out. It's already published, so whatever the video before this one on my video list, that one, just watch that. Trying to get back into doing gameplay. I wanted to do some gameplay for Steam Next Fest, which just didn't work out timing wise, and I still need to figure out my setup and fix this UI that you're seeing around the screen because it's wrong. Just every aspect of it is wrong and I need to fix it, and I haven't got around to it. Anyway, hoping to do some of that soon. Crimson Desert is out pretty soon. I do want to do some playthrough of that because it's still not clear if we're getting a cyberpunk situation again, because a lot of the previews have been the PC build, and even Sony's own PlayStation blog preview where they're hyping up all of the PS5 Pro enhancements. Apparently that preview was also done on a PC build, so yeah, I'm hoping we don't, because it's very impressive looking and I hope it does play the way it's being shown. Yeah, I'm just really hoping we're not getting another cyberpunk situation here. Anyway, we'll see. That's next week. I think 17th, something like that, I think, is Crimson Desert. Anyway, that's it from me though. I'm going to head off. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.